Aaron Jones returning to the Vikings. Ryan Wright returning to the Vikings. Whole bunch of other people slated to go today. It is Free Agency Monday here on the Locked On Vikings podcast.
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast, where we're always trying to learn something new. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day every single day. I appreciate you all so very much. My hashtag everydayers, and I appreciate you all so much if you are new here, or if you just haven't checked in since the end of the season. Hello and welcome, or welcome back, as it were. Thank you so much for coming and hanging out. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So it may have been a while for some of you, but we are back into a huge news cycle. Free agency opens today. In fact, there's a reasonable chance that by the time you listen into this, free agency has opened. And not free agency in earnest, just the legal tampering period. But for our purposes of trying to figure out who's signing where and for how much, deals can be agreed to. That's where we're at. We got 2 days here where they can't actually put pen to paper. They can shake hands, but it's kind of like college recruiting in that, like, it's no more than a handshake. Everybody can go back on their word if they want. Famously, Anthony Barr did that a few years ago to come back to the Vikings, so lots of things are there. And there is so much to discuss. The Vikings locked down a couple of pieces on the eve of free agency on Sunday. Sam Darnold is reported to be pretty much done with contract talks with the Vikings. He's going to free agency. Plus, there's a whole bunch of other players that, at least as of this recording, I haven't heard like anything about. So we got to kind of go over those situations too. So I'm going to give you like the primer on what you need to know going into today. If you're listening to this, on your way to work in the morning and free agency is going to open later today, here's everything you're going to need to know. But I guess we'll start with what's probably the biggest news in everybody's headlines right now, which is that Aaron Jones is back to the Vikings. It's a 2-year, $20 million deal. $13 million of it is guaranteed. So cap hits wise, there are a bunch of void years on Aaron Jones's deal. So it does sort of smooth everything out a little bit. And then the Vikings are going to take a modest dead cap hit in 2027. You don't have to care. But he'll cost under $5 million, cost like 4.8 this year. He'll cost 12.8 next year, but only $2 million of that is guaranteed. So that's definitely going to be a discussion about possibly restructuring the contract, or even just cutting or trading it. So he'll depending on where the Vikings are at with their cap and what they want to do, that will be something to talk about next year. But it's definitely an out. Like, call it a team option, right? A team option to maybe have this only be a 1-year extension instead of a 2-year extension. But if they go with the 2-year extension, that'll be 12.8 mil. And then unless they, mess with the contract, and then I think it's like 5.6 mil is still left over on the end of it that you'll have to pay out in 2027. But obviously you can push more into the future too if you want to like post June 1st it or whatever. All stuff to talk about next year. But Aaron Jones is once more a Viking. That's a commitment for 2 more years of Aaron Jones. He'll be the 3-year running back, and the Vikings can enjoy that. Just takes a ton of pressure off of a position that you do not want to have pressure on heading into the draft. I like Aaron Jones a lot. I'm a big fan of this move. I think the price is totally fine. I really wanted to see him come back, but at the same time, if it did end up being Najee Harris or something like that, like, it wouldn't have been too hard to talk me into that stuff. But this works. This works out great. And I think they made this move pretty efficiently to give themselves a floor at the position. And then if they do want to draft somebody in the mid rounds of the draft or whatever, they certainly still can. They still want a long-term answer at that position. Of course, that's not like Ty Chandler. But now there's nothing forcing anyone to do it. If you've got Aaron Jones in the building, you're good to go. Bring back Cam Akers. I would love to see that as well. And then you're just like chilling. But hey, if DJ Giddens joins the team on day 3, like, I'm going to be happy with that as well. What I do think this takes the Vikings out of contention for is doing something like drafting like Ashton Jeanty in the first round, or like whoever your first, who your big name running backs. I think with Aaron Jones in the building this year and next, a first round running back is going to be like by committee for the first 2 years of the rookie deal. And then like, you're going to be weird about paying him. Like, I think that is less of an option now, less of a reasonable option. But of course, if you fall in love with somebody, you fall in love with somebody. These are all sort of tertiary things that will come second to, but we had them really high on our board. Sometimes a team will just do it. So it won't stop them, but I do think it makes it a lot less likely. Elsewhere in the world of re-signings, Ryan Wright comes back to the Vikings on a deal that is worth, we'll say, up to $2 million. So it's a $1.75 million deal with a little bit more that can get all the way, get up to fully $2 million with some incentives. So the Vikings have Ryan Wright in. Now, if you listen to the Chris Kluwe episode, if you didn't like what we started talking about in that one, just skip the first segment. We talked about Ryan Wright in that one as well. You should go back and check it out if you skipped it. Chris Kluwe thought that Ryan Wright, he's got a hang time issue and that he should have camp competition. I think that this deal kind of points at a similar vibe. This is less than the tender. You could have a restricted free agent tendered Ryan Wright easily and had that be done. And they got him. Not only did they offer him less than that, he agreed to less than that, which tells me that the rest of the league probably wasn't high on him at all. How would he know that, you ask? Well, tampering. Not the legal kind of tampering that's going to be going on all day for the next 2 days, but the illegal tampering that happens at the combine all the time. Agents just know. And plus, a lot of agents represent other players and, know how contracts are going to be around the league. That people talk, people talk. So I'm going to guess that Ryan Wright did not anticipate that his agent didn't anticipate that his market was going to be better than the tender. So he thought, you know what? Yeah, I'll take this. I'll take continuity and we'll hang out. But I wouldn't be surprised to see Ryan Wright have to beat somebody in camp and in earnest, in a real sense, and not just we brought in some undrafted guy that we're going to cut before the first preseason game even kicks off. I wouldn't be surprised to see a real competition there. Elsewhere in the re-signings world, there's a lot of work the Vikings still have to do. For me, it's about midnight Central Time as I record this. So anything that happened after that and I missed it, I'm sorry. But we're still waiting on answers for Byron Murphy, for Cam Bynum. Those are the two big names that are going to head back out. And then also Sam Darnold. We'll talk about him in a second, how the Vikings have kind of moved on to other things, I think was the way Ian Rappaport put it. And, smaller re-signing type guys like, Dalton Reisner, is he coming back? Cam Akers, is he coming back? There's all kinds of guys leaving. So I'll also later in the show, I want to talk about some of my favorite free agent targets that are worth going after. And some of them just hit the market a day or two ago. So it's definitely changed. If you checked in February, and we talked about, maybe Trey Smith as a guard and, all the, it's a totally different landscape now as guys have re-signed. The tags have come down on guys. Guys have been cut as cap casualties. Trades are going wild all over the league. And trade rumors are going wild all over the league, but it's not the kind of stuff that I think the Vikings would have been interested in, right? DK Metcalf and Myles Garrett coming back to the Browns. That wasn't really where the Vikings would be. So while the whole league's going crazy, the Vikings are just trying to lock down the insane amount of talent that is poised to walk out the door. But for now, Aaron Jones, Ryan Wright, they're locked in. And the rest of these guys that are possibly heading out, we're going to have to talk about. So we got a whole bunch more to get into next on the Locked On Vikings podcast. Today's Locked On Vikings episode is brought to you by Intuit TurboTax. It is tax season, and hey, that used to mean waiting and wondering and worrying if you were going to get all your money back, and then waiting and wondering and worrying some more. But now, taxes means just matching with a TurboTax expert that's going to do it all for you. They can do your taxes as soon as today, and they'll give your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on your day. An expert will find every deduction possible, file every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy. So all you need to do to get the most money back guaranteed is get an expert on TurboTax.com. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now this is taxes. Only available with TurboTax Live Full Service. Real-time updates only in iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. Moving on with the Locked On Vikings podcast. Thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day. So the other thing that broke over the weekend that we've talked a lot about over the last couple weeks. If you are just trying to catch up on like Sam Darnold stuff and, oh my God, why would the Vikings let Sam Darnold walk? So that's the news. Ian Rappaport reported they talked a little bit about the tag. They declined the tag. They talked a little bit about an extension. They didn't get it done. They have moved on to other negotiations, and Sam Darnold is poised to hit the market. Apparently, it's being sold as there's a big factor of that, Seattle, they trade Geno Smith to the Raiders, and now they have an opening, and they're really interested in Darnold, and suddenly that makes the market such that, the negotiation. I don't really buy it. If you've been listening, if you've been in every day, or that I kind of felt like this, like he was going to walk. Like it didn't matter who it was on the market, whether it was the Steelers or the Giants or the Raiders before they got Geno, or now the Seahawks, like whoever, they were going to be more motivated to pay Sam Darnold because they were going to be more in a spot to give Sam Darnold a bona fide starting job instead of making him compete with somebody for it, which is what the Vikings would do. And you're just not going to spend as much on that guy. So that has all transpired the way I kind of thought, with the Seattle entering the market, making it, I guess, a different market, but like it takes the Raiders out of it. So I don't really buy it, but sure, whatever you got to say, rap sheet, whatever the team needs you to put on NFL Network. So Darnold walking, gone. And if you're confused how they could win 14 games and let their quarterback walk, they won 13 games and let that quarterback walk not even a decade ago in Case Keenum. They were absolutely right to do that, and I think they're right to do it again here. They got a rookie waiting in the wings. J.J. McCarthy's their guy. They're ready to go forward with him. That said, there are a few things we're not done watching quarterbacks yet. For one, we got to see where Sam Darnold goes, and crucially, how much he makes. If he makes more than, I'm going to call it $25 million, he qualifies for a third-round compensatory pick, and that matters a lot for the Vikings. It's actually fairly likely that he ends up being the biggest free agent contract. He's the only real quarterback on the market that's not either like so far past his prime or, some kind of reclamation like Justin Fields. He's somebody who's actually coming off of the market in a big place. The only other quarterback that teams even considered this offseason was Matt Stafford when there were trade rumors going around that could compete with the sort of market that Sam Darnold has right now. Was Matt Stafford back in the combine when trade rumors were circulating, but he's off the market now. So it's just Darnold. So he could very much be the biggest free agent signing that happens. And that would mean the Vikings would get pick 97, which by the way, they have pick 97 this year from Kirk Cousins, and they basically just be running back the same thing. Just let quarterbacks walk and get a third round pick all the time. I guess that's an efficiency. But with Darnold, we're watching that. And I did a whole comp pick breakdown. There is a detail that I do want to update you on that. It's not about the average value of the like other signings they bring in. They just have to not also be third round compensatory picks. So that's actually a really important thing to understand, is whatever the Vikings think the cutoff for a third round compensatory pick is, whether they think it's 23, 24, 25 million, it's going to be something like that. They are going to be really hesitant to sign any player for more than that in free agency because of how it affects their compensatory pick versus a guy that's $2 million cheaper. You get to keep your third rounder and probably isn't that much worse. So if you ever see guys signing for what will count for a third round compensatory pick, like amounts, the Vikings are probably going to be out on those guys. That doesn't guarantee it, right? Like you can absolutely, like if the guy of your dreams comes along and you want to do it, sure, just understand it's also costing you a third round pick. And I just don't see the Vikings doing that, but that's how they can preserve that. And that third round pick next year is probably bigger than anything they would have gotten in a tag and trade. There's a reason tag and trades don't really happen for quarterbacks. And it's because when everyone knows you're trying to get rid of that $41 million dude, they're not going to give you anything. I mean, like looking at what the Raiders gave one third round pick this year for Geno Smith on $10 million cheaper of a deal, and Geno has proven it for a lot longer than Sam Darnold has, and everybody didn't immediately know that they were going to trade him. So if that tells you what you need to know about the market, right? Anyways, I'm done arguing that with people. I was right. Deal with it. But anyways, the other machinations on the quarterback market that are worth watching are what the Vikings do at what I'll call for now backup quarterback, but it's probably going to be more of a competition. So they've been really clear, both like publicly in interviews, but also the reporting around it from like the local beat has been very clear that the Vikings don't want to give J.J. McCarthy the job outright and, they don't want to Sean Mannion this with the backup, right? They want the backup to be both somebody who is a real boy at quarterback that you know if McCarthy does get hurt, you got to put him in for a month. You're not scrambling to make a transaction, right? You don't want to. That's the Sean Hill rule, right? Don't end up where if you go down, your backup is so bad that you feel like your season's pissed away. But also they will want this to be a competition. Right now, Daniel Jones is probably plan A there. He's been in the building. They apparently liked him enough because they're trying to get something done with him. The Colts are also interested, according to Diana Rossini. So we got to see how that goes down. I'm going to guess that situation gets cleared up pretty fast because the Colts and Vikings are in that situation where they've got a young guy and they want competition for him. It's going on with Anthony Richardson as well over there, which is kind of funny. I really wanted Anthony Richardson. The Vikings got really close to trading up for Anthony Richardson, and here the Colts are in the same spot that the Vikings are in now with the guy they ended up with. I don't know. It's funny how things work out. But you know, the Aaron Rodgerses of the world, Russell Wilson, Justin Fields, the other quarterbacks, and Sam Darnold, of course, that are really going to be angling at like anointed starting jobs are probably going to have a more drawn out market with a lot more negotiating, a lot more like, you know, subterfuge and negotiating through the media and all the crazy stuff that goes on with contract negotiations. While I think the Colts are just going to kind of be fighting with the Vikings over Daniel Jones, and we'll see who comes out with him there. But we kind of got to watch all of that stuff. And if somebody like Justin Fields or Russell Wilson ends up in Indianapolis, then that probably just like pencils Daniel Jones right into Minnesota, or it might work the other way around where Daniel Jones ends up in Indianapolis and then the Vikings start getting in on somebody that's maybe a bigger name than Daniel Jones. Or I don't know, maybe they just like go grab Jimmy Garoppolo off the market and say, hey, we're not going to do anything too crazy about it. But hey, there are a lot of people out there that are very interesting to watch that I would like to point some names out to you. Look, I'm not going to give you the comprehensive free agent list. There's like 200 people out there that could end up being Vikings by this time tomorrow. But there are a few names that I think you're going to want to know if you're like totally just like stepping onto this for the first time. So this is going to be for you guys. So that'll be next on Locked On Vikings. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. March Madness is here. Selection Sunday coming up on Sunday. And FanDuel is giving you a chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 extra to use on anything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories. And all you got to do is win a $5 bet. Put down $5 on a 1 to beat a 16. You're good to go. Assuming that one wins. Looking at you, Virginia. But you can use that money on anything, picking your favorite 12 seeds to upset 5 seeds, or just staying in the action. If your bracket's totally screwed up, you can put down some gambles on FanDuel just to stay engaged in the later rounds when you definitely thought Michigan was going further than they would go, or whoever it is this year. And it's super fast and easy to use the FanDuel app. So visit FanDuel.com to get in on the college hoops all tournament long. Moving right along with the Locked On Vikings podcast. Okay, I got a bit of a wish list here, a free agency wish list. There are obviously some interesting situations to watch just with like former Vikings or people who are about to become former Vikings that we have to keep an eye on. Obviously, Cam Bynum and Byron Murphy are the big ones. It's very unlikely that Cam Robinson ends up back in Minnesota. Obviously, all doors are open, but let's be honest, he's going to want to start somewhere, and Christian Darrisaw's coming back. The Vikings will probably get somebody at tackle to start the first couple games if Darrisaw's not ready, but that's not going to be Cam Robinson. But what he ends up going out and making somewhere is going to be really important to the Vikings compensatory formula. There's obviously the Harrison Smith situation. He has a contract trigger that happens this week that fully guarantees, I think, $25 million in base salary. That ain't going to happen. So they're going to let that deadline pass. So we'll see kind of what becomes of Harrison Smith's contract there. And then there's other guys that, you know, like Pat Jones. What happens to him? Stephon Gilmore. What happens to him? Depending on when they sign in for how much guys like that sign for, that could also affect the compensatory formula. But enough with these old names. Okay, what about the new? What about the fun ones? So I would say that now that running back is a little more squared away, we're probably looking at 3 major positions for the Vikings to add at free agency. This is by no means comprehensive, but I would say interior D-line, interior O-line, and safety. and corner, I guess. So 4 positions. D-back is what I was thinking, but we'll split that up. We'll call it 4 positions. So with those 4 positions, there are a few names to go over that you probably want to know about. So Trey Smith, we spent a long time of the offseason with him kind of being the belle of the ball on the offensive line market. He takes the tag from the Chiefs. Then they trade Joe Thuney away to the Bears. I don't see them trading their other guard away. So I'm going to guess he stays with the Chiefs. He's off the market. You can cross his name off the list. Will Fries is the guy I've heard a ton about. Will Fries is Colts guard. He had a really nice season last year, but it only lasted until week 5 where he broke his tibia. He was out for the season. So it's very quasi. I think the secret on him is out. Like, I don't think his market's going to be that depressed just because he's coming off of a fractured tibia. Those do tend to just that is not an injury that you don't come back the same from typically. That's more about knees and soft tissue stuff. The fractured bones tend to heal a little bit cleaner, at least on average, right? So I don't think that his market's going to be super, super depressed, but he's somebody that, you hope the Vikings are really into. There are some older names out there that could be worth looking at. Brandon Scherr for Kevin Zeitler. If you just want to get a wily old veteran that's going to be a 1-year Band-Aid while you maybe draft somebody who's meant to develop behind them. But there are some other names that you're going to get guys with blemishes this time of year. Kai Becton is an interesting name. Patrick McCarry, Aaron Banks. All those guys are into a tier of guys that have definitely had their ups and downs. I would say Will Fries has as well over the course of their career. And so is Tevin Jenkins, I would say, as the Bears kind of struggled to find a spot for him, but it seemed that right guard seemed to work out okay for him. All of those names are, to me, a big jumble. Get one of them if you want, but I do think the Vikings are probably going to want to replace somebody. They certainly don't have to, and that's something they can have leverage against. If they do end up going into the season with Brandel, Bradbury, Ed Ingram again, other teams have more dire needs than that, where they just physically don't have a body. At least the Vikings physically have a body. It's just not one that they're maybe satisfied with. So they can negotiate against that leverage and maybe not get highballed by anybody here. Or I don't know, they could bring back Dalton Reisner, call it a camp competition, and grin and bear it, right? But I think grinning and bearing it at guard is something that everybody's seen a little bit too much of. But it's defensive free agents that there are a lot of, they're going to be active. And that's the thing. The Vikings have a ton of cap space. According to Over the Cap, they're working with $58 million in effective cap space. That puts them 7th in the league. So they've got a lot of money to work with right now. Even after all the big extensions and Justin Jefferson and now all the dead money from Cousins and Danielle Hunter, that's all gone. They have pretty minimal dead money this year, and they didn't exactly have to do a bunch of cap casualties or anything and incur a whole bunch more. So they got a lot of money to deal with. They have got very, very few commitments over the next couple of years as well. So they have future money to work with. They're going to be active, but they've got a lot of needs. They might have to pick up 3 more starters on the defense and a starter on offense in the next 48 hours. They're going to be busy. So maybe the biggest name on the D-line market now that Osa Odigizua is gone is Milton Williams. He's coming off of the Philadelphia Eagles, just kind of the odd man out in that super stacked room. But I think that so the PFF contract numbers, which are a little weird this year, but they've got him making $21 million a year. If that's an underestimation, you start to flirt with that line that, hey, if we offer you any more than this, it could ruin our 3rd round compensatory pick, where you're just going to be a little bit more reticent to make that offer versus a team that doesn't care nearly as much because they don't have a big player leaving. So instead, we could turn our eyes to guys like Levi Onwuzurike, if you can keep him healthy, or BJ Hill, who's going to be 30, but still got plenty of game left in him. Tershawn Wharton is a name that some people are really, really excited about from the Chiefs. I like the highlight reel at least. And I think, I don't know, I'm not going to give you too in-depth film stuff on any of these guys until they actually are signed. Somebody like T.R. Tart has been suggested for the Vikings in the past. But there's also the thing about the D-line market is there's a ton of guys that have recently been cut, like Draymond Jones, if you want to call him that, but more directly, Jonathan Allen, Malik Collins, guys like that have been released before their contract was up, which means they don't count toward the compensatory formula, but they very much could still fill the need for the Vikings. I sort of see the Vikings going for one of those on the interior. I think that's the best place to find one. And then there's the secondary. Secondary is tough because we still don't know, at least I don't know as of this recording, who's coming back. Even if the tampering window opens and Bynum and Byron Murphy are able to go out and negotiate with other teams, that means that a bidding war will start. And every indication is the Vikings will be in on that bidding war, but that the player went, I'm not signing anything with you until I can go see what the market's about. Unless we get some sort of surprise early in the morning, in which case we'll talk about it. I'll be live for a little bit on the Minnesota Football Party. The Minnesota Football Party will be live starting at 11 a.m. and going to however long Sam wants to go. I'll be able to pop in for a little bit of that. I do have a prior engagement, so I'll be kind of in and out, but I will go live on this show. I might, if they do enough today on Monday, I might go live like twice. We might get 2 shows. Like, I don't care. Let's do it. Anyways, some names to know. Obviously, the Byron Murphy thing coming back, that's the first question. But assuming Byron Murphy does not come back, the Vikings are probably going to need 2 corners, and that's assuming that Mekhi Blackmon's a dude. If Mekhi Blackmon is a starter, you need 2 corners. If he's not a starter, you need 3 corners. So good luck, right? So DJ Reed is a name that's been linked with the Vikings a lot. He's going to be, I think, 28 and a half, 29 when the season starts. He's a smaller corner, but he's played inside and outside plenty well. He's kind of proven to overcome that size. It's the 3rd contract guy. It's not going to be the most expensive he's been in his career. So he makes a ton of sense for where the Vikings are at to me, and I think he's a great scheme fit. I'm a big fan of signing DJ Reed if you let Byron Murphy walk, or even if you don't let Byron Murphy walk, because you still need a guy. Trevarius Ward is another very exciting name. He's been killing it with the 49ers for forever. I've seen some rumor, and I apologize, I forget where it's from or who said it, but like somebody in the local Viking space has suggested Carlton Davis as somebody the Vikings are maybe into. Of course, he's not old, he's 28, but he's coming off of injuries. He didn't quite have the season in Detroit that they wanted from him. But I also I haven't heard much about it, but I love the idea of Mike Hilton. I think he's a perfect Flores corner. He's a great blitzer. He plays on the inside as a slot. He fits the run. He does that sort of versatile role that he can always be on the field for you. You do not need to ever take him off the field. Yeah, he's 31, but you're going to have to band-aid over this position for a while you actually get some real young talent in there, and you're going to have to just keep band-aiding it until you get some real young talent in there. That's why the Vikings have been in 1-year deal hell at the cornerback position for years and years and years, because the young talent hasn't worked out, right? It's been Andrew Booth and Caleb Evans, and now Mekhi Blackmon gets hurt and all that, but he's back from his ACL, by the way. So it's a matter of how good is he, not a matter of how healthy he is now. He's fully cleared off the ACL. That's a thing of the past. And then you have safety. So safety is another really difficult one because we don't know what's going to happen with Harrison Smith yet. And some of these safeties might be off the market by the time we find out. Javon Holland is the big name, but there's also Talanoa Hufanga, Justin Reed, Trayvon Morig, Justin Simmons. There's again a lot of names, but some of it's like the old guy. So you might see the Vikings go sign a bunch of the old guys. Or they might go a totally different direction. Genuinely, I have no idea. I have no idea what we're going to see in this big old free agency. All I know is we're going to see a lot. That I'm going to be a busy man over the next week. So I hope you are here with me. So here's how this is going to work. Look, this is a daily show, so some stuff might happen and then immediately become irrelevant the second I post it, because it is an hourly news cycle and this is a daily show. So I'm going to try my best. I'll go live in the wake of big signings and stuff. And maybe even do double shows in a day. But I have a couple of prior engagements that I have to deal with this week as well. So it might not always be the most instant thing, but I will be here with you breaking down every single move, every single everything. So come on down, become an everydayer, subscribe on YouTube if that's your jam, or just go listen to Locked On Vikings wherever you find your favorite shows. I will talk to you tomorrow at least once. And as always, Skull.